Hello, in this video we'll be discussing different ways to obtain starting elements for UIA scripts. These are the elements we'll be interacting with in our code to get to the actual elements we want to deal with. So let's hop onto VS Code, and here I have a small script that activates Notepad. So if I press F5, then Notepad window comes up. This here stores the window title, and I use the normal auto hotkey win activate and win wait active to wait for the Notepad window to activate. So the first starting point element we're gonna look at is ElementFromHandle. ElementFromHandle first argument takes the window title, a window handle, or a control handle. So in this case, since we are dealing with a window title, we can simply use the same variable win title that we used in the win activate functions. And we can, for example, highlight the window. So here we see that the Notepad window element was found and was highlighted. This can be any kind of win title that win activate or similar functions accept. So if we leave this empty, then similarly as to these functions, the last found window is used. So if you want to learn more about the last found window, you can look at the win title and last found window article in the documentations. So if I save this and run it, then again the Notepad window gets activated since this is using the last found window from win wait active. If we wanted to use win text, exclude title, exclude text also in ElementFromHandle, then we can't do that directly because the first argument is only the window title or handle. But we can simply assign the output of win exist to get the window handle. So we can, for example, get Notepad from here, then we get the window handle for Notepad, and we can use that handle in ElementFromHandle. Okay, so I said that a control handle can be used as well. And in Notepad, we can, for example, inspect the Notepad window with window spy, and we see that it has this edit one control. And if we wanted to get the element or the handle to that control, we can simply use control get handle or HWND, short for handle of window, and we can put the control here. And since we can use last found window, we don't have to specify a win title. Now this HWND contains the handle to the edit one element. So instead of the window being highlighted, the edit element instead is being highlighted. All right, so next up is the cache request argument. This we're gonna take a look at in later videos about caching, but basically this takes a cache request object and then returns an element with some cached properties or prefetched properties. We're not gonna discuss that in this video, but on a later video. And the last argument is activate Chromium accessibility. This argument is needed because some of the newer windows, for example, this VS Code here, is not a regular window per se. It's actually a browser. It's a Chromium-based browser. And how can we tell that it is a Chromium-based browser? We can simply inspect it with the UIA viewer or WinSpy. And if the class is Chrome widget win1, then we know that this is a Chrome or Chromium window. So why is this activate Chromium necessary? It's because Chromium windows are a little bit lazy with accessibility. And by default, accessibility might be turned off. So this activate Chromium means that a special signal is sent to these windows only once for each run of the script, which tries to activate the accessibility so UIA will work in that window. So for example, if I use in this window the VS Code window, then it would indeed get the VS Code window element and also try to activate Chromium for it. And we see that the default value is 500, which means that this is the timeout value as to how long the script will wait for the accessibility to be turned on. This is half a second by default, or 500 milliseconds. If we wanted, we can turn this off by putting 0 or false in here, in which case Chromium won't be activated, as we can see here. However, this usually isn't necessary because the ElementFromHandle will automatically detect whether the window in question is a Chromium window or not, and then decides whether to activate it or not. So this will probably not give too much of a speed improvement. So the next starting element method we're gonna look at is the GetRootElement. If you want to see a list of all the starting point element methods, then you can go to the UIA main page on GitHub and check out the wiki link. And then on the right hand side is the UIA tree and accessing the tree. So here are all the different starting point element methods. And we are going to take a look at the GetRootElement now. So GetRootElement returns the element that represents the desktop itself. So the currently active desktop, if you are using virtual desktops, then it can't return other desktops than those that are active at the moment. So only the active desktop can be returned. If we try to, for example, find the notepad element here, so we can use the notepad Windows name, which is untitled notepad. And if we highlight it, then the notepad window location is highlighted. GetRootElement is usually very rarely used because ElementFromHandle limits the search only to the window. GetRootElement, if we are trying to find an element from the desktop element itself, then it will need to look at all the open windows. And some of the windows are very big, in which case the search will be very slow. So it's better to use ElementFromHandle or some other starting point element methods that limit the search scope a little bit. GetRootElement also has the hash request argument, which is optional and nothing else. The next one we're going to take a look at is GetFocusedElement. So this gives us the currently focused element, either with keyboard focus or with mouse focus. So if we try this in VS Code, then we find out that it returns the carré element, or where the carré is currently located inside this text. However, if I press Ctrl F and open the find dialog and focus that, then we see that this element instead is highlighted. Or if we activated notepad, so when activate and when wait active, then the edit element will be focused because it's the focused element. GetFocusedElement also has the cache request optional argument and nothing else. This method might be useful if you are trying to find out what the user is currently interacting with, or get the element that the user is currently interacting with or typing into. So for example, if you wanted to get an edit element or text box element and get its content, then this can be useful. So next up, let's take a look at ElementFromPoint. ElementFromPoint returns the element from a specific screen coordinate, or if no arguments are provided, then it returns the element from where the mouse currently is. So for example, if I use this UIA.ElementFromPoint.highlight, then this should highlight whatever element is currently under the mouse. For example, it highlights this element, or we can try to highlight this search element, or wherever I run it, then it highlights the element that is currently under the mouse. So we can also specify X and Y coordinates. For example, I can put 30 and 70 here, which will get the element at X and Y screen coordinates 30 and 70, which is, let's highlight it as well. So it highlights this element right here. This also has the cache request argument, and it also has the activate chromium accessibility argument, which works the same as in ElementFromHandle. So it gets the window at that point, detects whether it's a chromium window or not, and if it is, then tries to activate accessibility in it. And the next one is a special method, the ElementFromChromium. So sometimes Chromium windows are not easily accessible. So for example, the ElementFromHandle might show as if the window is totally empty. ElementFromChromium specifically gets the Chromium content of the window. So I'm going to show an example using a Chromium window called the Bitwarden. So if I launch UIA viewer and open a Bitwarden window and I press start capturing, then we see that it isn't detecting anything inside the content. So if you look at what the class is, it's Chrome widget win1. And we get this pane element, which is totally empty, but we see that there are some elements inside of it. So if we try to locate, for example, the continue button, then we can try to use UIA.ElementFromHandle to locate Bitwarden. So this works. And we can try to find an element, find element with name continue. And we can try to highlight it. But as we see, we get an error message that an element matching the condition was not found. And yes, when we inspected with UIA viewer, then indeed there wasn't such an element as the continue button. However, if we use ElementFromChromium instead, then we see that the continue button gets highlighted properly. So this is, for example, one possible scenario when to use it. Similar applications are Discord or Spotify, or whenever UIA viewer near the UIA tree says that it's using ElementFromChromium. For example, Discord content is examinable with the UIA viewer, but you have to use ElementFromChromium to actually access the elements. And if we take a look at the arguments for ElementFromChromium, these are also familiar: activate chromium accessibility, whether to activate the window as well or not, and cache request. There is actually another alternative to ElementFromChromium, and we can inspect the Bitwarden window a bit more with the UIA tree inspector tool instead. So if we run UIA tree inspector and open up Bitwarden right here, then we see that it has Chrome render widget host. Or if we press it, we see that we get the Bitwarden window But if we press Chrome render widget host, then we get some additional elements inside of it. So here we have the continue button right here. And what the element from Chromium is actually doing is that it's getting this control right here, getting an element for that control and returning that element. So if we wanted, we could simply copy this. This is Chrome render widget host HWND1, and we can use the same function we used before, control get handle. And let's use Chrome render widget host HWND1. And if we use ElementFromHandle and specify this control and then run this script, then we also see that the continue button gets highlighted. This is how ElementFromChromium works internally. And lastly, there is element from IAccessible, which can be used to get elements from older ACC elements. So there is the ACC library, and this method can be used to get an UIA element from an ACC element. We are not going to take a look at this because UIA usually has more reliable ways to get those elements. Also, this method is quite limited because it doesn't work in most windows. So this is it for now, and see you in the next video where we'll be taking a closer look at find element.